everyone, welcome to this live stream. I just got an email from somebody and it is a really great question. It is a question I get a lot. This is actually one of the things that we tend to talk about a lot in our Goats 365 meetings because there is no single answer for this. And so I'm going to read you her question. She's a podcast listener. She's been listening to all the podcasts and she's going to be getting 4 kinder goats next week. And she wants to know how she needs to subdivide her area. It is about 200 feet by 700 feet with a little over half of it being wooded. And so she's wondering how she needs to separate that. And you know what? I can't answer that because I would have to be there on her farm. And then because so a little over half of it's wooded. Well, which half? Because and how is it wooded? Like what kind of plants are on it? Is it wooded with like really tall evergreens and the goats can't really reach much in terms of, you know, the foliage? Or is it wooded with a bunch of bushes that are, you know, nothing but foliage and there'll be tons there for the goats to eat? But then the thing with that is if the goats, if you leave them in there too long and the goats strip all the leaves off, the bushes are going to die. So there's just so many variables that it's impossible to say, oh, 4 kinder goats. Well, you just need, you know, 20 by 60 and that'll be fine for 3 days. So basically, when you are figuring out, so what you need to do, like for 4 kinder goats, because she's going to be getting her stuff from Premier One. So for 4 kinder goats, what she's going to need, 1 roll of the electronet should be sufficient. One of the long rolls. I know they have half-size rolls now, so get the full-size roll. I don't know if they still sell them in meters. We have like 15, 16 rolls of it, which we've purchased a long time ago. I think they used to be like 100 meters was a roll. But basically for 4 kinder goats, you just need 1 roll of that. And then you put them in an area with that. And when the grass, if there's grass in there, when the grass gets down I like to move my goats when it's 6 inches. And you know, one reason why is because I've actually measured my hand. So here's my ruler. See, that's 6 inches. So I can walk out into my pasture and I'm like, this looks like getting kind of short. Stick my hand down. And if the grass is below my wrist, I'm like, yep, time to move the goats. Because the parasites, the larva from the worms is going to be on the lower 4 inches of the grass. So the thing is, so a lot of people think they can't do rotational grazing because they think they don't have enough land. I'm so happy to see that she does not think that. A lot of people would think that 200 by 700 might not be enough. I've gotten messages before from people who have only 4 goats, not even kinders, smaller goats. And they think that like a paddock for them is an acre. And the fact is 4 goats are probably never going to eat on everything that's on an acre if you just leave them on an acre. So the key is definitely to move them. You want to move them. You don't need to move them any sooner than every 5 days because it usually takes about 5 days for the worm eggs to hatch and mature to the larval stage that is infective. You can absolutely. In fact, I had somebody once, she bought 4 Nigerian dwarfs from me about 17, 18 years ago. And she used 4 livestock panels, so 16 by 16. And for 4 Nigerians, she needed to move that usually about every other day because they would eat all the grass within a couple days. So, and the other thing too, is that if you are going to move them every day or two, then yeah, they can eat it all the way down to the dirt because there's no larva on there if they just came onto this grass yesterday or the day before. So they're not eating from their toilet at all in that situation. So that works really well. But with 4 kinder goats, the other thing too is, are these kids? Because if usually people start with kids. So if she's starting with 4 kids, then the area that they will need will be will be a lot less than what they're going to need next year during the growing season. We're almost at the end of the growing season here. She also didn't say where she was located. So, if she's in the mountains of Colorado, the answer for this is going to be very different than if she's in Georgia. And if it's evergreens or bushes, like I said earlier, you really want to be careful with wooded areas. One of the people I interviewed on the podcast, she said a lot of people get goats to get rid of invasive species on their property, and then the goats do it, and now they have to start feeding the goats because the goats ate all the invasive stuff. So I used to say that I wouldn't leave goats in an area with tree trunks that were less than about 4 inches in diameter. So 4 inches like that, like a tree trunk needed to be at least that big, unless I wanted them gone. So actually the reason we started letting our goats graze around our pond was because the willow trees just started popping up like weeds. I mean, like weeds, like they were every 2 inches, there was a baby willow tree coming up. It was so thick, you could not walk through there. And so I actually have heard of people planting willows because they grow so fast for their goats. And so we let the goats go around our pond to eat all those baby willow trees, which they did. And, now that's part of their regular rotation. And so we don't have any more areas that look like, large areas of baby willow trees, like weeds. So anyway, like I said, one roll of the electronet and then if the kids don't, so you put them in an area, if they haven't eaten it down within about a week, make a mental note of the size of that area. And then your next area needs to be a little smaller. So your goal is to put them in a place where they can eat everything within about 5 to 7 days. And by everything, I'm not talking about like completely denuding the whole area. I had somebody once who contacted me about chicken tractors and saying that it ruined her yard or grass because she was leaving them in one place until it was down to the dirt. And that is not what you're supposed to do. So, with the goats, we're saying, I like to move them at 6 inches. The research says the larva's on the lower 4 inches of the grass. So definitely by the time it's down to 4 inches, you need to move them. But if you want to move them at 6 inches, that's great. If you want to move them even sooner. So I hope this has helped you to understand a little better about some of the decisions that go into deciding how quickly to move the goats from one place to another, as well as how to figure out exactly how much space they need. And do keep an eye on the wooded stuff, because I started to say this earlier. I used to say that you shouldn't put your goats in an area for very long if the trunks are less than 4 inches. But then my goats actually killed some trees that had trunks that were like 6 inches. So you really need to keep an eye on them. Keep an eye on like those tree trunks and make sure. What happens is if they gird the tree, if they strip the bark all the way around, then that basically cuts off its lifeline and the tree will die. So if you see them stripping the bark, because they love bark, so if you see them stripping the bark, you need to move them, and don't let them spend enough time in there that they will be able to completely strip the bark all the way around, because if they do, then your tree's dead. All right, I hope that this has been helpful. Thanks, everyone. If you've got any questions, post in the comment section below.